Am I wrong for refusing to see other options for a girl and pressing charges for what she had done to my son's car? My 39 male, son 17 male, Bryce dated our neighbor Lana, 17 female, for a year. They broke up mid-January for reasons I don't know. I won't sugarcoat this. I never liked Lana. She always seems a little unhinged, controlling, and aggressive. She's always demanding Bryce's attention, and there was quite a few times when she showed up to our house out of nowhere. Whether it was 7 a.m. or 11 p.m. because Bryce wasn't answering his phone, screaming and calling him a cheater when it wasn't like that. The thought of our son getting abused by his girlfriend made us worry so much. My wife and I tried to talk him out of that relationship. We said how it wasn't normal nor healthy. We didn't want to force the breakup because we feared Lana would lash out on him, so we tried to do it in a sneaky way. We don't know if it worked, but they ended up breaking up. He said that after he broke up with Lana, she didn't contact him, which was weird because she expected her to go nuts, but I told him that if fate didn't give him shit, he better not tease it. Now, the problem is that we bought my son a car for Christmas. Nothing fancy, just enough to get him to school, his job, and eventually college. He parks it in our driveway outside our home. Ever since the month began, we had been finding scratches all over the car. We knew Lana was doing this, but since it was minimal, my son decided not to do anything, even if we could prove that it was her. We have CCTV. Still, something felt bad to me, so I decided to switch one of the cameras facing his car directly just in case. Well, 2 weeks ago, we got up and we found my son's car covered in a lot of shit. Paint, glue, feathers, confetti, the door handles were wrecked, flat tires, paint all over the windows, you get the picture. Bryce and my wife were so distraught. We called the police and handed them the CCTV of Lana and her brother, 23 male, destroying my son's car. We pressed charges, and needless to say, Lana's brother went straight to jail. But since she's still a minor, her parents want to make a deal, but I refused. I don't think she should get a way out. Before the police was here, she was laughing her ass off and she tried to play it cool. If she thought this was funny, then she's old enough to face the consequences. My wife and I want to stand our ground, but her parents say they'll buy my son a better car and put Lana in therapy, but it's not enough. So, am I the asshole?
Storytime about how my husband forced me to do the dirty with another man and filmed it. I told my husband to get rid of the video, but he doesn't want to. And now he's asking me to do it again with somebody else. Here's a little backstory. My husband and I have been married for 4 years. He's in the military, so he spends a lot of the time away from me. Now, sometimes I think this is a blessing, but it's also a curse. When he's away from me, he's really sweet. He sends me written hand letters saying how much he loves me and how much he misses me. But in the same breath, he'll turn around and accuse me of sleeping with somebody else because I didn't answer the phone while I was at the supermarket. He gets jealous at least once a week, and we always end up having a huge fight over the phone. But when he is home, he's completely hypersexual. He wants to do it all the time. And if I don't want to do it, he gets upset. He once told me that he should just have a girlfriend so that when I don't want to do it with him, he can have somebody else to do it with. And I know that you guys are going to say this is all toxic behavior, but I don't really try to correct his behavior. Because he's in the army, he thinks everything he does is right. And it's just easier for me to go along with it. Is that bad? And now that I'm asking him to delete it, he says he won't. Like I said in part 1, he's in the army. So when he's home, he's super hypersexual. Always wants to have sex, and if I don't want to, he gets really mad. The last time he went away, he started writing to me about his new fantasy. And guess what his fantasy was? He wants to watch me do it with another man. But as soon as he told me, I said absolutely not. First off, I don't want to do it with any other guy. Secondly, I don't want to do it in front of my husband. Remember how I said he gets jealous and we always fight about it? He said that this way I could do it with any guy that I want and he wouldn't get jealous. I kept saying no for a full 2 days. That's when he started calling me every single night, telling me that if I loved him, I should just do it, and that so many other women would do anything to please their husbands. He even said that I should consider myself lucky that he would be willing to let me do it with somebody else. That's when he started sending me pictures of other men in the army, and he basically said, take your pick. But I kept saying no. Then he spent the next 2 weeks trying to convince me to do it. He wore me down so much that eventually I said yes. I finally gave in and said yes to doing it with another guy. I had literal knots in my stomach knowing that I was going to have to do it. But I justified it because a lot of women do things that they normally wouldn't do for their husbands. So why shouldn't I? My husband finally came home from the army. 2 days later, he scheduled the meeting with the other guy. The guy that I chose from the pictures was actually really handsome. So the doing it part wasn't that hard. It was having my husband in the same room watching that was really hard. Then I noticed that my husband took out a camera. He was full on filming. I told him to turn that off and he said no. So after the guy left, I told my husband to delete the video. But he says he wants to keep it for when he goes away to the army. Everyone has their kinks, but this made me really uncomfortable. I actually feel like I can't trust that he won't show it to anybody. Imagine if he shows it to his army buddies. Now he's asking me to do it with another guy. What the heck should I do?
Imagine winning a $30 million lottery and then going missing. On November 15, 2006 in Plant City, Florida, Abraham Shakespeare and his coworker Michael Ford are on an overnight delivery route to Miami. Abraham gives Michael two $5 bills and tells his coworker to grab him some lotto tickets. He grew up in poverty and dropped out of school early. He does all kinds of jobs from fruit picker, dishwasher, and garbage man. He was earning around $8 an hour in these jobs. Well, one of his 2 lotto tickets ends up winning him a $30 million jackpot. However, he's a humble man and even gave his last $3 to a homeless man just before he won the lottery. He takes the lump sum instead of the annual payment and ends up with around $12 million after taxes are taken out. His generosity stays the same. He gives $1 million to his stepfather and $250,000 to each of his stepsisters. With his new money, he buys himself a mansion, a nice car, and a Rolex from a pawn shop. However, about 3 months later, he gets sued by his co-worker Michael Ford, who got the lotto tickets. Ford claims that the lotto tickets were his and Abraham stole them. He states that since he purchased the lotto tickets, the money, or whatever is left of it, belongs to him. In court, just after 1 hour, the jury finds it in Abraham's favor. Michael Ford appeals the verdict and the case goes on for months. During all of this, Abraham realizes that he's been giving one too many handouts and is losing his lotto money at a frightening rate, which is starting to get to him. In October of 2008, he meets with a woman named Dee Moore, who is a self-made financial advisor. She offers to help him with his finances and starts collecting on the many loans he had given to people. This included a $63,000 loan he had given to his barber named Gregory Smith. He had given Smith a loan, but only after Smith insisted on signing a contract stating he would pay him back. One day, Abraham doesn't show up in court for the ongoing trial with Michael Ford and no one can find him. On November 24th, 2009, he's officially announced missing. A month passes with no new information until 2 days after Christmas, his mother gets a call from someone claiming to be him. However, his mom knows for a fact that it isn't him. Who would call a mother and expect to impersonate her grown child? This is when the family starts to suspect foul play. Imagine winning a $30 million lottery and then going missing. Police trace the call. They find that it came from the barbershop owner Gregory Smith, who owed Abraham Shakespeare $63,000. When police bring Smith in, he states that he was forced by a woman named Dee Moore, Abraham's financial advisor, to make the call. She had been pressuring Smith to pay back the loan or he'd lose everything, including his barbershop. She told him that if he called Abraham's mom pretending to be him, that she'd forgive his debt. She also stated that Abraham had left town and was tired of being hounded by people for his money. However, phone records show that Abraham stopped making any phone calls months prior. He had stopped calling and switched strictly to texting, and only to Moore. However, the thing is that Abraham never learned to read or write. So how was he doing this? Police set Smith up with a wire to record the conversations he has with Moore when they meet. During their conversations, she admits that she believes Abraham is dead and it was the doing of a crazy drug dealer from Miami named Ronald who threatened her. One day, she shows up with a handwritten letter and asks Smith to deliver it to Abraham's mother. In the letter, Abraham tells his mother that he's not coming back in fear of being arrested and scolds her for not recognizing his phone back when he called. Smith knows Abraham didn't write the letter because he knows that he can't read or write. When police take a closer look into Dee Moore, they find a long history of fraud and lying. By the time Abraham went missing, all of his assets had been transferred to her company. When investigators bring her in for questioning, she stated that she paid him in cash for all of his assets and shows a video of Abraham stating that he's going to flee to California because he's fed up with people asking for money. In January of 2010, Dee asks Gregory if he knows anyone who'd be willing to confess to killing Abraham for a price. Gregory states he has a cousin going to prison for 25 years and for enough cash, he might just do it. She agreed to meet his cousin, aka an undercover cop, and offers him $50,000 for the confession, but to make it believable, Smith needs to know where the body and the murder weapon is. A few days later, Dee gives him a gun and takes him to the house that she owns. She states that Abraham is under a concrete slab, and that's when Gregory states he'll be back later that night with his cousin to get the body. Police get a search warrant for the property and then question Dee again. She switches up her whole story. She states that 2 drug dealers came into her office demanding $200,000 and that Abraham owed them. Ronald finds Dee's gun in the safe, shooting him twice in the chest and threatened to kill her if she spoke about it to anyone. However, she's a known liar and investigators can't believe what she says. When they search the concrete slab, Abraham isn't there. They reach out to Dee's ex-husband and he states that she had him bury a hole in the backyard back in April, right when Abraham disappeared. On January 28, 2010, they find human remains and determine that it's Abraham Shakespeare. They find 2 shots in his chest being the cause of death. They arrest her and charge her with first-degree murder. On December 10, 2012, she's sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole plus 25 years for possessing a gun in the course of a violent felony.
What conversations have you overheard in a language they assumed you don't know? My favorite experience of this occurred right after my wife, a former model, and I got married. We were at a Mexican resort, lounging on the beach. My wife is fluent in 5 languages. We were sitting there on the chairs in the shade, to avoid getting burned, when a crew of 5 couples came and sat in the row of chairs in front of us. They placed their stuff, then all of them, except 2 guys, left to go to the water or the bar or something. I stepped away to grab us a couple of drinks. While I was gone, these 2 guys started talking in Russian, one of her languages, in a rude but complimentary fashion that their wives definitely wouldn't have approved of. She was offended, but didn't want to make a scene. After I returned, they stepped away and she told me what had happened. We waited until their wives came and sat down with them, and I got my wife to go ask one of the ladies, in Russian, what time it was. The lady was so excited to have someone in Mexico speak Russian that she invited us to come sit with them and chat. She even invited us to join them at dinner. The 2 guys were horrified, but couldn't say anything without outing themselves. We were all at the resort for the next 8 days, but every time the guys saw us, they redirected their wives to go look at a lizard or something. It was an amusing and harmless payback. My wife could have told on them, but she decided to let them teach themselves their own lesson. I hate my special needs sister and I'm done hiding it. When my younger sister was born, she almost died from hypoxia. She suffered severe brain damage, to the point where doctors doubted she would survive. She has survived to 16 years old now, however, she is about as close to brain dead as a living person can get. She can't move, she can't communicate, she can't eat or drink on her own. She has no control over her bowels, so she has to wear diapers. She will never get better and she will never live a normal life. Despite that, my mother has ruined our family hoping she will have a miracle and recover. My mother has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on my sister. Everything from wheelchairs to doctor's visits. We had to live in a one-bedroom apartment for 11 years because my mother spent all of the money she made on my sister. Nothing she bought made any difference. She will always be a drooling mess. Since my mother believes she will get better, she made me treat her like she was a real sister. I lost all my friends growing up because my mom made me take her everywhere I went. If I told my mom that I was going to the park, she would say, "Oh, a park. That sounds like something Jess would like, take her with you." Not once did she stop to think about how absurd she sounded talking to her. One time, my mom took her to a movie theater. They made it barely 30 minutes through the movie before staff kicked her out because my sister was making so much noise, coughing and choking on her saliva. Despite all this, I somewhat tolerated my sister, until a few hours ago. I mentioned to my mother that I had planned a date with a girl I met at work. My mom said, "That sounds like fun, but I'm having coffee with a friend from college, so can you take care of Jess while I'm gone?" I told her that I couldn't because of my date, and suggested that she hire a babysitter. My mother then said that I should just take her with me.
A couple weeks ago, I was out of the bar with my wife and some friends, and while I was in the bathroom, a man came over to the table and decided that he was going to ask some of the girls at our table to dance. And whenever they all turned him down, he decided not to take no for an answer, and he got a little bit aggressive and a little bit pushy and even a little bit handsy with one of the ladies at our table. Now, I came back from the bathroom and I was made aware of the situation, and I decided to confront the man, not with violence as he would have deserved, but with love. And I went over to him and I weaponized this thick, juicy booty, and I busted it down sexual style all over him. And I do mean filthy, filthy dancing. And I grabbed him around the waist and around the back of the neck like I was going to give him a big old smooch. And it was weird how 5 minutes prior to this, he was totally prepared to force someone to dance with him whenever they didn't want to. And all of a sudden, now that he's dealing with a mountain of man meat with a mustache who's never lost a game of gay chicken in his life, he remembers the meaning of the word no. Crazy. Okay, love you, bye.
What's something dumb you thought as a kid? I was just thinking about this today actually. I don't know what reminded me, but I'm even a little embarrassed today at how dumb I was. When I was like 7 or 8, I was on a competitive swim team. I was pretty bad at it. I got a lot of participation ribbons, I'll put it that way. One day I dove in the water and thought I should try swimming fast today. So I did, and when I poked my head out of the water, my coach was standing there looking at me like wide-eyed. She yelled, "That's a first. You got first place." I won the race. Or whatever you call winning at swimming. Anywho, I randomly remembered that years later and it hit me. Like, what the F was I doing before that? Did it just never occur to me to try to win? What did I think swim meets were for? Just for fun? And why did I never try this new trick of swimming fast again? God, I was so dumb. I went to a Catholic elementary school. I was giving a presentation in front of my 2nd grade class regarding how God created the heavens, the earth, the mountains. I never really understood how the timeline worked around all that. I just knew the basic bullet points of the creation story. But then I go on some tangent about how upon the creation of earth, remember, I didn't understand the timing around it and just winged it. God must have been a big fan of prominent historical figures. George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Jefferson, Roosevelt. My 2nd grade teacher realizes what I'm about to do, and rescues me from the impending hurricane of ridicule I was about to summon from my peers. She hurriedly separates me from my execution panel, and in the privacy of the hallway, explains to me that Mount Rushmore was not a natural occurrence.
So as you guys know, modelling can include some rather crazy outfits. And recently I posted a TikTok including this picture that raised a few eyebrows. To set the scene, this was my first ever modelling job 2 years ago. And I was rather excited, you know, oh, I'm going to be a professional model. Twat. And all of a sudden the stylist comes out with what I can only describe as a very large white condom. And I thought, okay, no worries, we're doing high fashion modelling now, so I have to be open-minded. And before I know it, I've slid into these very weird pants. But then I look down to my right, and this lovely lady has whipped out an air pump. I mean, I don't see any flat tyres around. And before you know it, I am inflating. It took 10 minutes to inflate. And I immediately turned into what I can only describe as either a ginger walking Teletubby or massive testicles. They were very hard to walk in. It was very interesting. At the time I was thinking, oh my god, what have I done? I don't want to be a model. But I look back now in my mature state and I think, no, that look was fucking sick.
I just want my sister-in-law to expire. I, 32 female, have a 7-year-old son who's autistic. I also divorced when we found out that Greg, my son, was autistic, because my husband was ashamed of having a weirdo as a son and demanded that we give him up for adoption. I simply denied. He got mad and left. My sister-in-law, my brother's wife, Mary, 28 female, literally hates my son. Since the day we found out he's autistic, she was constantly saying that I need to get rid of him because I will soon feel embarrassed. She was also telling us that my ex-husband did the right thing and that I should have listened to him. Nobody has ever said anything and I have never caused any drama because I didn't want to ruin the whole vibe, since I only see her in family gatherings. But today it happened. Even though Greg is autistic, he's the smartest human I've ever seen. Today is my mom's birthday, so I had the chance to meet Mary again. As she was talking, she was sometimes making small mistakes and Greg was the one correcting her. At some point her face turned red, she stood up and started yelling at my son. She was calling him problematic, weird, said that she now knows why Greg has no friends and that his dad was right about leaving him. My son cried. For the first time. He has never cried about a situation before. At least not in front of me. He usually gets a little moody when something happens to him, but we talk for a bit and, then, he's smiling again. I was too shocked to say anything. I just stood up, took Greg's hand and left. But then I realized that by leaving, I wouldn't make things any better. So I told Greg to wait in the car. I went back and everyone looked at me in shock. My parents were trying to stop me because they knew that Mary had fucked up but I didn't really care. She hurt my son so she should pay for it. I watched her as she was standing up and walking towards my direction having this annoying smile in her face. I grabbed her by her neck, barely letting her breathe. I just told her if you ever make my son sad, I will make sure you spend the rest of your life more miserable than ever. And left.
Ida for encouraging my ex-husband to take a DNA test and potentially destroying his family? Part 1 is already posted. I met up with James and we started talking. Currently we have an okay relationship, no hard feelings. He said he was engaged and had a 7-month-old son. I said that I had 3 children and he said something that would be I'm happy for you, you managed to solve your infertility and got your family. I just gave him a giggled and told him honey, infertility wasn't on my side, I was able to have kids with you too. The matter died there and I went to another corner of the party. Yesterday I got a random call from an unknown number. When I answered it was the fiancé, ex now, yelling at me that I had meddled in my ex's life and encouraged him to take a DNA test, which came out him not being a father, and now James has called off the wedding. She said I destroyed their family by meddling in their lives. My friends said I shouldn't have intruded. I didn't encourage it, it was a normal conversation and he didn't even reply to this. Ida,